Welcome back, One Winning Pod, where we are going to recap the Ravens' victory over the Jaguars, 23-7 on Sunday Night Football. And guys, before we get into it, we have a milestone to celebrate. It's our 250th episode of One Winning Pod. Congratulations, guys! Man. Some fake applause on the soundboard, maybe, if it exists. Yeah.
Oh yeah, we don't have it.
Can you believe 250 episodes, guys?
Man, it's incredible. I mean, gosh, and to think back what we were doing then and where it is now, man, what a journey it's been. It's been a lot of fun.
Indeed, man. 250 episodes is a lot. And it's funny too, because like we used to do mega episodes where it was like recap and preview all in the one episode. Then we split it up. So kind of juiced the numbers a bit. But
man.
It's also just like what actually people want, right? That's how they want to get the information.
Consume the content.
So, consume the content. I hate saying those words, but here it is. Give the people what they want, yo. So yeah, it's been fun, man. I definitely also appreciate like kind of the growth of the show. What Peter's kind of alluding to, it's like definitely grown over time. Had some really cool guests. I mean, shoot, we've had NFL players now on the show, which is like wild. And just like some pretty cool people on, and made some great relationships along the way. So it's always fun to reflect on, how far we've come, over the last several years. And next episode later in the week, you'll get one with Aaron, and we had him on back in 2019 when we first started the show talking about San Francisco. So it's like full circle, right? We've had some guests on twice, but it's been 4 years in between, the name change, etc. So it's kind of cool. So them Ravens, they won. Love that. 23-7 against Jacksonville. And how do we feel, man? How do you feel about this win? Do we feel happy, or are we just like kind of like, well, that was good?
I mean, I can speak for myself, and then we can kind of speak to the fan base as a whole. But I feel great, man. I has been a little surprised with. It's felt like the past 2 weeks have kind of gotten a kind of tepid response from, I wouldn't say everyone that I've talked with in the fan base, but overall, we talked about this gauntlet of these 5 games coming out of the bye week. Like you won the first 2, and honestly, like the Ravens really couldn't afford to drop either of these 1-2. I know one of them was against an NFC opponent, but I mean, the overall record matters as well. And the next 2 games are certainly going to be harder to win than these first 2 were. San Francisco, obviously, might be the best team in the league right now. And Miami, Tyreek Hill or no Tyreek Hill, that offense has a lot of speed. So, I mean, look, is maybe Jacksonville not quite as good as their record? Possibly they've got some injuries. I think that Calvin Ridley's, there's some cracks starting to show in his skill set coming back from his time off. Pass defense is certainly suspect, but I mean, come on, man. This team I still think is better than what they were last year, and we lost the game last year. So I think you got to look at it as a positive. Personally, I'm pretty excited about this win. I think that this team is really rounding into form.
Yeah, they won decisively in Jacksonville. I mean, that's what it comes down to. I know, yeah, Peter, you'd love to bring it up as a history of the Ravens-Jacksonville matchups, but they generally suck against Jacksonville. And it's not just years when the Ravens aren't good. They could be great, and they could just lose in Jacksonville. And yeah, I mean, to come out of it 23-7, like, that's a pretty decisive win. Honestly, really wasn't ever much in doubt. Beyond like the first quarter, I guess. But yeah, I mean, I think from that perspective, it's great. I mean, I think the worst news, obviously, is the Keaton Mitchell injury. I think we got confirmation today. It's a serious knee injury. I think almost everybody looking at it thought it was, or was hoping that it was not, but it was. So that's honestly, I think, the biggest thing. If we're talking about the recap, I mean, he was looking really explosive before the injury. And, after, things are going to change. So, we don't want to talk about all of that right now. We can certainly talk about it more in the 49ers episode and kind of going on. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the dark cloud, I think, over this game is, there's a lot of promise there, obviously. And he was a really, really good player. And, to have him gone, another running back for the year, it sucks.
Definitely dampens the mood Ravens clinched the postseason, and I think we all assumed that was going to happen anyway, so it wasn't particularly thrilling. And also, I think we all have bigger goals. 1 seed, AFC Championship game in Baltimore, maybe Super Bowl. These are all would be wonderful things. Like I think I said on Ken's show that because I think I did Lamar Jackson. So I was like, what's Lamar Jackson like great year? I wanted a good and great year, and I said a great year would be that he brings AFC Championship football to Baltimore, right? Suggest a 1 seed. It would suggest a really good year, obviously, and like something that the Ravens have literally never had. And understanding the fact that like you get the AFC Championship game, you're playing really good teams, you might lose, whatever, like, but it'll still be a very successful season. And I think we're on pace for that now. And it's just like, oh, I want it so bad. So that's the North Star, and clearly I think the Ravens feel very similar, where like their North Star is obviously winning it all, or just like some sort of bigger success than just like individual games or individual accolades. And Coach Harbaugh wants to hear nothing about this MVP race discussion for the 49ers game, and doesn't want to discuss MVP this or that. And I love it. I love that Lamar like apparently didn't know that we clinched playoffs. Okay, cool. Like we're just on to the next game. I love that mentality, and it's one thing I didn't really appreciate in the 2019 season. We had all the big truz, woo woo. Just like it was so jovial. And this year is like everyone's just so, and we all got wrapped up in it. We all enjoyed like that ride, but now it's like this is like very business like these guys are like bringing their suitcases and they're like, or their briefcases rather, to the boardroom, and they're just trying to get these wins and cut deals, and get out of there, whatever. and I love it. Like so it's a very professional outfit. Not to say they weren't professional before, but like there's like one clear goal. Yeah, they're not having fun yet.
Which I think is great for this, for this team. I mean, you look at 2019, we're not in the locker room, obviously, but you looked at what happened. You kind of felt like maybe the team, let their guard down a bit and thought that they were actually that good, right? And injuries, the Titans, whatever one of you blame really for that loss. Some of that might have been true. 2020, I think they came in with the right mentality. They just, went into a bad weather game in Buffalo where the Bills just made one less mistake and they won the game, right? And then the last 2 years, we probably would have gotten into the playoffs really easily, but it had not been for injury. So I do think, you look back at it, and I agree with everything you're saying. Like, the Ravens right now at this point, making the postseason, not that big a deal. But I think we do have to step back and kind of look at what this franchise has come back to. Because obviously the first part of Harbaugh's tenure here in Baltimore, 2008 through 2012, making the playoffs was an expectation. Then it hosts the Super Bowl 2013 to 2018. I mean, obviously there were several seasons there without playoffs. And in the years that they did make the playoffs, it was getting in on the last week of the season. We needed in 2014, we needed, I forget who to lose, and they did. And then we came back against Cleveland in a game that was tight. Obviously, then there was a game in 2018 against Cleveland where we needed that CJ Mosley interception to send us to the postseason. So, this is just my perception, and maybe I'm off. It feels like there's not as much excitement over this as there has been in years past. But I think, we got to look back and just be like, hey, look, we've rebuilt the franchise in Harbaugh's tenure. We've gotten them back to that prime position where playoffs are expected. And I think that's something as a fan base that we should celebrate. And I think it's gone overlooked a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, certainly tricky. I think the number one thing is honestly it's just the lack of success. It's almost like hey, we've made it the last couple of years, but not much happens. It's not like the original 2008 2012 where it's like hey, we're guaranteed to win at least one game, pretty much. Sometimes two, sometimes three. Sometimes winning it all. So. Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit different, I think, from that perspective. But hey, I mean, yeah, it's especially good this year. I mean, just looking at the AFC as a whole, it's a very strong conference. And, even a couple of weeks ago, we were kind of looking at it and we're like, oh, yeah, there are a lot of teams right now vying for these spots. They've been able to pull away a little bit. And, especially with the game over the Jags, if they had lost this game, the Jags still would have been within a game of them. But certainly it makes that margin of error much, much smaller because of head-to-head tiebreakers and things like that. So being able to pull away with 3 games to go is definitely a good position to be in. If we're talking seeding, but anyway, let's get into the game. Let's go back here. So one guy we did mention a little bit earlier, Lamar Jackson. I do think this was one of his great games. This game, not so much I think from a statistical perspective, but just man, what are the plays that he brings that he allows the offense to complete because you have him on the field? I think the perfect play I think to kind of bring up, everyone's talking about it, is that I don't want to call it hospital pass, but the check up to likely downfield.
It was the hospital ball.
yeah. I mean, how do you be able to extend the play that long, avoid the sack, spin out of that, step back, continue, throw it all the way across the field into double coverage, likely comes down with it. I mean, do you guys remember that meme from I don't know, it was the Ravens subreddit for a while. It was Joe Flacco looking down the field to try and find somebody, where he's just looking, and there's one guy's open. He's nah, I don't see him. He's another guy's open. He's nah, I don't see that. And then he's and he just throws it. And then I think it was Bolden or something
defensive pass interference.
That's the meat. That was yeah, or that. It was that. I mean, that's what this was, man. It was just vintage. It was oh my god, I cannot believe it. That's crazy. But I mean, just obviously, joking aside, you had in the athleticism to be able to do that is just incredible. I mean, there's just not many people like him.
Lamar definitely did that thing where in prime time, he reminded everybody that he's special, and everyone got the opportunity to see why he's such a fun and dynamic player. I love the fact they were showing his time in the pocket, where he was getting 8-9 seconds in the pocket, just ridiculous amounts of time in the pocket. And also they discussed the maturity of Lamar Jackson, something we've discussed too, that he's willing to stay in the pocket longer to try to find that play. And yeah, we saw some nice route running by Bateman on those plays to get open and get the catch on a couple of them. And also saw an unfortunate pick. But, it's one of those things where I definitely think Lamar had a wonderful game. Definitely was doing well with his legs as well. Some really good running. Really thoughtful, I thought, running too. You could definitely tell there's a couple times he put the Jets on a little bit, and other times, he kind of smoothly navigated away from harm's way. And I really appreciated that. I think Lamar was really on his A game for the most part, and had a good game.
I mean, he looks confident and comfortable in the offense right now. And that pass play, the likely we're talking about, that was after the pick, and that's what you really want to see, because you're going to make interceptions as a quarterback. And I don't have the statistics to back it up, but it felt to me that back in the Roman offense, after Lamar threw a pick, it felt like the play calling would get even more conservative after that, right? We wouldn't necessarily, Greg Roman wouldn't necessarily have Lamar go back out and, and start chucking it again, unless the game, the game scheme dictated that, right? He was incredibly patient this game. Let a lot of things develop, and that's great to see, because that's a spot where we can have a huge advantage as an offense, because obviously you've got Lamar with his legs back there, and you have a lot of guys who can do stuff after the catch. Obviously Bateman, we saw that in this game. Zay can do that. Beckham likely certainly can do that. Get Justice Hill in there. He has the opportunity to as well. Gus Edwards is even catching balls on these plays, so when you're looking at this offense and you need to continue to find ways to keep defenses off balance, when you don't have J.K. Dobbins, you don't have Mark Andrews, now you don't have Keaton Mitchell, adding that patience with Lamar, and not just, okay, when the play breaks down, just go off and run. I think he was starting to be more patient in years past, but this game, it was really on display quite a bit. And hopefully that's the direction that he's trending towards, because that's probably him at his most dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, certainly. I think he's putting some good games together. Especially with the competition just getting harder and harder. I think while I'm sure that there are a lot of plays to have back, like the interception, that was one. Obviously I think that was just kind of a poor decision. That was one where that was almost where it was almost like Lamar should have kind of taken a few yards just to be able to get the first down, but he wanted to, be patient, and he wanted to be able to try and make a bigger play, and ended up just not seeing the defender behind him, and defender ended up making a good play, getting that interception. But I think all that said, I think it was it's the right mindset, right, and the ability for him to kind of just shake it off and be like, okay, cool, I'm going to ignore that play. I'm not going to let it get to me. I'm just going to keep playing my game, and he ended up finishing strong. So. Yeah, I think it'll serve him well, especially going into these next two games. Against the Niners in Miami. We're kind of the top of each conference. So, but offensive line, I think another one we have to talk about. Obviously, being able to block a good bit. Lamar is part of that equation. I do think the offensive line has been blocking somewhat better than usual. However, I think tackles is definitely something we have to talk about. The tackle rotation is continuing. So Stanley was out for a little bit. McCary was in, subbing in. Moses was out for a little bit. And then Falele was in. And then Cleveland, I believe, was in. Actually, well, no, he wasn't in.
He was
for
like a tight end
tackle,
though.
but he was kind of like tight end in for a couple
Yeah.
plays. But yeah, obviously, I think the interior is doing good. Tackles still a concern. Even that play that that we were talking about earlier, that Lamar extended. I mean, that was pressure given up on Moses twice, the same guy twice. So, I honestly, for me, that's kind of the biggest question mark moving forward, especially as we get to these teams that have really good edge rushers. Is Lamar, going to be able to do enough to escape, to find the open man with all this pressure in his face?
I knew that Falele came in. I didn't realize he played basically half the game, which is good. He held up pretty well, I think. And I know that they used more of the rotation than last week for Stanley as well, bringing in McCary. I guess we'll see how this goes. I think it's not the worst plan going forward, but I really just do hope we see the fruits of it with Stanley and Moses getting healthier and being more productive, and maybe eventually weaning them off of the program, so to speak. So I don't know. What do you guys think about that? That would be my question back to you all is, if this is successful, do you see them actually weaning back, or just this is going to be the normal going into the playoffs?
I see no reason why it can't be the normal going into the playoffs, as long as it's not, messing with offensive continuity. Honestly, I think it seems to be the smart move. Is it something that an approach that I thought they'd take? No, I can't say that that's where I thought they would be going, but we practically every position group in the on the field goes through rotations in today's offenses. You don't have running backs who are getting 100% of the carries. You don't have defensive liner out there the whole time. Why shouldn't the offensive lineman shuffle as well, if that's something that your team can take advantage of? Falele, I know in the past, has been a guy who has struggled at times, but I think you look at it and you're saying, he played most of the game and you didn't notice. In the past, when Falele's in there, you notice. You're not looking for him. So that's not the super high tech analysis there, but I think it's you're trying something out here, and you have the cushion. You made the playoffs. You can try some things, right? And the odds are that Stanley and Moses are not going to hold up for the entirety of a postseason run, playing all the snaps in a game. So try this and just see what's the most we can get out of them.
Yeah, I mean, it's fine. Obviously, it's not really a position where you can pull in packages and say, hey, I'm only going to bring in run plays or only you on pass plays. That'd be a terrible idea, just from a, being able to the defense to key in on you. But, it really wouldn't work. You'd be subbing out way too often. The continuity just wouldn't be there. So, hey, as long as, I think we can keep trying it. it's one of those things too. Like I think maybe earlier in the season we talked about maybe there might be like a 2012 playoff situation where you put in a piece and shuffle around some more, and then like all of a sudden you have the golden combo and everything works. I'm not sure if that's it right now, because I was just thinking about it. I was like, well, what if Moses went to the left side? Like, no, Moses is like having the same, like obviously not as bad as Stanley. I think he is more reliable, but he has a couple small injuries, little things hurting him. So that's not really the right move. And McCary's still good. I trust him, especially in short spurts on the left side. So um, I think the answer is we'll see. Right now, we're fortunate enough. Lamar, he's got enough. He's got enough mobility. He's got a knack for extending plays. I think really we just need to make sure that he has an outlet for being able to extend those plays. Obviously, I think in a lot of those he's kind of looking for the kill shot. But even having guys underneath just be able to get open, get a first down, like sometimes it's kind of hard for guys to kind of get off their defenders and find some space. I think I think in this game, I think they did a decent job overall, but I do say I think Jacksonville did a pretty good job of being sticky on the back end and trying to prevent some of those plays. I mean, obviously, I think Lamar had tons of time to be able to look for open guys downfield and still would end up holding the ball. So I think that they were doing a good job on that side too.
I'll add in that the offensive line was able to create some good holes for the running backs. I felt like I think that's why the running game was able to get over 200 yards, kind of ho-hum, kind of quietly, I thought. And then also point out that Kohler sneak. That's something we haven't been able to see before. We've seen a couple Mark Andrews snaps, but this kind of felt a little unique in a way with the Kohler package, and it's good to know that you have it in your bag, and definitely something to keep an eye on going forward.
Yeah, I agree. With when you're looking at the run game, that was huge in this game. Being able to do that in the second half, there were holes. There were holes available, and man, is it such a shame that Keaton, that injury happened. He was on his way to maybe his second best game as a pro so far. I mean, that game against Seattle was just insane, even if that was mostly garbage time. But that one run that he had where he just cut, it was all the way on the right side, and then he was able to just bring that play all the way back to get the first down and then some. That speed, man. God, I hope that comes back after the surgery that he's going to have to get, because that is something special. But yeah, I mean, we saw a little bit more production from Gus. There might be something going on with him. He's still, I think you look at this game, he had more volume, but I think that was kind of the same that we've seen from him the past couple games. Able to just kind of dive forward and break a couple tackles and then fall over. Justice Hill had a couple runs, and obviously Lamar, gosh, he almost had 100 for the first time in some time. He hasn't had to rush that much for some time. But yeah, I mean, really overall, despite the fact that would have liked to see more from Gus, I think you got to take away this as a positive from the run game in this matchup. Well, I think we got to talk about the receivers a little bit. I mean, I think that you look at this game, and while Lamar had a great game, and we got Likely involved quite a bit, I was really curious how little we saw from Zay. Now, again, did it matter? No, because obviously the Ravens won handily, and the offense was doing just fine once they started getting rolling in the second half, and towards the end of the first half as well. But yeah, I mean, you look at that going forward, and it's interesting. If you look at that, and was that just a case of the Jags took Zay away, or was really a game plan just to not get him involved? I'd imagine it was the former, because as much of a playmaker as he is, I feel like he's got to be a focal point of any offensive game plan that we have going forward.
I mean, I'm not hurting that I lost in a dynasty league because of those guys. I'm over here being like, man, I needed like literally 5 points to win, and they got me nothing. I was like, surely Zay and OBJ are going to put together 5 points. And yeah, it didn't work out. It's funny too because I had OBJ before he was a Raven. I got him, when he was a free agent, thinking that he was going to sign somewhere. But anyways, yeah, like those, I played those guys like with confidence. Could have played Njoku and easily gotten the dub, and I was just like dying, that I just didn't. I didn't play my flexes properly, but yeah, it is surprising to me that we said Lamar had a good day, but those guys didn't produce that much. And honestly, Lamar, 14 for 24, not the greatest passing game from that perspective. So I would like to see those guys more involved in the offense, not even from like a fantasy perspective. Just like I kind of truly think with the loss of Keem Mitchell, they got to find better ways to get explosives out of their pass catchers. I'm not quite sure if the run game is going to be as there. I'm concerned about Gus Bus. I think Justice Hill is okay, but not as, obviously not as good as Keaton. So I think that's going to be one of the big things going forward. I think this Keaton loss is bigger than folks are maybe fully like digesting, and I think it's going to take some real introspection on offensive scheme going forward, because I think things have really changed. Even though that we didn't have Keaton for a while, right? Like there was a part of the season where we didn't have him, but we did have Mark Andrews, right? So,
well, I
it's
mean,
one of those things where like we're losing pieces.
Sure. And I agree with that. I think that, you really don't want to keep losing playmakers because, this is at this point 3 outstanding playmakers that you've lost in this offense to date. But I do, if you do look at Mitchell, and this isn't to take away anything that he did during his stretch because it was obviously all incredible. I mean, you take him out of all those games, I still think the Ravens win those games. Like, I mean, he was a critical part of the offense, but I don't think he was ever so big as to that, his impact was deciding games.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, potentially. I mean, it might just be a situation now where just, combined with, the loss of Mark Andrews, you've really, you've lost, I guess, you've lost a significant ability, from these players to be able to kind of like, generate the explosive plays, not necessarily like scoring plays, but just like explosive plays, to be able to significantly move. So you don't have to, put together these really long drives to be able to move down the field, akin to like, the short passing game, for example. Like we could do that, but I mean, that's where drives end up stalling out is if you don't, you string together 3 or, 5 of them, but then you fail on the 6th or 7th. It's like, well, okay, you needed like, 12 to get down the field. Right? So you fail halfway through. So, I mean, I do agree. Like it is definitely concerning there. I mean, right now, think about some of the big chunk plays, explosive plays that we've had in the last couple of weeks. Like Likely has had a couple of those. Obviously the one, pass we just talked about it. This one, I mean, that was a great, just kind of, chuck it up. Likely ended up coming down with it. I think Lamar actually has to have some more of those. Right. I think he needs to be able to put balls in position for his guys to be able to go up and get it. It's one of the weaknesses we kind of talked about for him. It's like he wants to see guys open before he throws it. Right. When you don't have guys, when you don't have as many guys who can kind of generate those explosive plays, particularly after the catch, or in Keaton's case for rushing, you got to just be able to put up the ball for you guys to be able to go and get it. And then at that point, like they may not get yak, but they'll get the ball. They'll generate a significant chunk play. So doing more of that, I think, is going to be super helpful. And I think Alec, maybe to your point, maybe you might agree with this, but I feel like what might be harder to come by now is like the Likely scheming open down the sideline with nobody around him for 20 yards because they were focusing on Mitchell, for example, on that play. Right? You might have less of that. Type of broken play without your explosive playmakers on the field, because now the defense can more easily spread out, not focus on a singular guy.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest takeaway almost from this game is like what will the next stage of this offense look like? And it's not against an easy opponent with the 49ers with their I think their 4th ranked defense in the league, or maybe they're I think they're 4th ranked defense. So very good defense. Lots of playmakers. So speaking of defense, let's talk about the number 1 defense in our hearts, number 2 in Devoa, the Baltimore Ravens defense, who Leading the charge with Matabike, got another sack. Could have had 2 if it wasn't for the intentional grounding, and continued his streak. And apparently is going for 15 sacks this season, which he could do. He's on pace.
Yeah, he could. Another week, another sack for him. Just a monster. It was really cool that he got the spotlight there at the end of the game. They had him and Lamar got to do the ESPN interview. Like we talked about earlier with Hamilton, talking about those Pro Bowl votes, popularity contest. Maybe the fact that he's putting up all those sacks could help him, but obviously being a new, younger guy, he's going to need all the help he can get to get his name out there to the national voting, voters out there. But I mean, just it's a cool moment for him. He got to go out there, show a little bit of personality. Had a fun interaction there with Lamar. Thought that was pretty funny there. Lamar's telling him that he owed him money for all those sacks. But man, it's just been a great season watching this guy. It's been great to see him consistently pressure the quarterback. Hamilton consistently pressure the quarterback. And I guess we'll talk about Hamilton next. A warrior. That's what several vets on the Ravens defense said of Hamilton. We talked in the preview. Questionable. Was this guy going to be able to play? He played. I don't know if he finished the game. I think at one point he did go out. I don't know if he returned, but while he was in there, I mean, certainly made an impact on several plays, causing chaos at the line of scrimmage and some errant throws from Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah, I mean, continues to look really great. I think a lot of guys in the secondary, I think, played pretty well. Marlon, I think, bounced back in a big way. I mean, I think he only had, I feel like that one pass to Zay Jones was really, I feel like, the only negative play. But I feel like he was in a lot more positive plays this week. So it's good to see him, continuing to gain his strength back. Stevens as well, I thought, looked pretty good. They tried to pick on him a little bit, and for the most part, he held up pretty well. And it's good to see, especially, one of the concerns I think from this week and the week before is that, while, Matabike is still getting his sacks, it feels like the defensive line is kind of slowed down a little bit, allowing a little bit more completions, things like that. So it's good to see even, at the back end, like, hey, we're still limiting plays. And even if the quarterbacks are able to make the plays, they're not generally very explosive. So, ending up with the Jags only getting 7 points, I think overall, yes, there were some criticisms for the defense, but I think overall they did their job well.
I definitely agree with the Marlon Humphrey observation. He played much, much better in this game, and that was great because, you have other secondary problems that we're worried about. We're worried about Hamilton. He was in and out of the game, played excellent when he was in there, just such a X factor. But then Marcus Williams exited the game. Apparently he's listed as day-to-day, so we'll see what that means. Gets a little bit extra rest playing on Monday night, so one can hope, but it's a groin injury, and those kind of linger and are tricky. So we'll see about that. It brings me concern about how they're going to deploy this defense going forward because I really do feel like Hamilton needs to be in the box. That's where he's best, and it might be valuable to figure out another safety option. And Stevens is playing so well. I'm almost willing, though, to move Stevens to safety, bring in Darby as another outside corner, and then have Hamilton in the box, playing the nickel position. So definitely it's a lot to do considering, how well Stevens is playing, and almost kind of mean to him, but he's a team player, and I feel like he might be down for it, but we'll see. Hopefully the Williams injury is not a big deal, and he's able to come back and play at a high level.
It's just been such rotten luck with Williams, right? I mean, he was a guy who had hardly missed any time during his time in New Orleans. He comes over to the AFC North, and man, frustration. But yeah, I mean, it's tough, right? It's a tough thing. The Ravens obviously had to figure it out earlier this season, and the rotation that they came up with worked pretty well. And now they're at least going to have to think about it in the short term, like you're saying. Hopefully, it's not something they have to, deploy, and Williams can go out there and just be himself. But yeah, I mean, keeping Stevens at corner, I really hope we'd be able to do that. Darby's been really good as well, but just the physicality that Stevens has shown this year. I mean, the Jags wanted to attack him. I think they were trying to draw penalties. I know they had some success against him last year, but I think they quickly found out that it was going to be tougher this year. And yes, he did give away that big pass play down the edge, which nearly would have been, giving up points for the Jags had not been for that awful clock management they had at the end there. But we'll just have to see. Trial by fire right away. You get San Francisco, right? So you have to figure it out on the fly and quick. But I mean, what better way to figure it out than have a test against, one of the top, if not the top offense in the league this year?
I was going to say one bright spot, linebackers and run defense as a whole, I think, ended up doing their jobs. I mean, one of the things we kind of talked about going into the Jags preview is that they were struggling a little bit to establish a run game, and that mostly continued. I mean, the leading rusher for the Jags, Trevor Lawrence, not what you would normally expect. Travis Etienne, just over 3 yards a carry, and the other running backs under 3 as well. So, they continue to kind of shut that down. I mean, that was good. It was good to see Etienne, while, struggling a little bit with the offensive line. I think he's still a very, very explosive player, obviously. Ended up getting involved heavily in the passing game as well. So I think that was good to see. I think, it's funny. The Niners are going to be a whole nother level, I think, of test. Their offensive line is definitely better. McCaffrey is just, definitely better. But a similar type of player, I think, to ETN, just, far more explosive on a far more explosive team. So I think it's encouraging going into next week.
Jaguars are missing a couple players. I feel like they would have been a bigger threat if they were fully healthy, obviously. And we just got like a more watered down version. I don't want to take too many victory laps from this win. I'm not saying that they weren't already like a good team still. It's just that I think the team that was competing for, the first seed at one point in this season, it's not the same team at this point. And best of luck to them going forward. But I do feel like we got a little bit of a letdown game almost from them. I was looking forward to a little bit, more competition, so to speak, but they're definitely struggling from those injuries.
I push back on that, actually. I mean, we weren't at full strength either. Like I said, we didn't have Mark Andrews. We didn't have J.K. Dobbins. The Jaguars, while pass defense the past 2 weeks has really been exposed. And I mean, honestly, I think that's kind of who they have been all year, really. I think it was their offense and their pass rush that was allowing them to have a step up earlier. They were in those games against Cleveland. They should have beaten Cincinnati. Had Trevor Lawrence not gotten hurt, they would have, I believe they would have won that game. Lawrence was really getting that offense into a groove if you watched that game, and then just that injury happened. And I think that they just didn't have enough there with, I forget, was it Beathard was their quarterback? Next man up is a part of the game. And I think, I'm not trying to pick on your response there, but I mean, I guess I've just been kind of getting a little annoyed by a lot of commentary that feels like there's been around this team, where it feels like every time we do have a win against a team that is beat up this year, we kind of bring that to the table and say like, oh, they won, but we can't get too excited about it because they were beat up. I mean, at some point we got to acknowledge that the fact that the Ravens this season have done the best maybe ever that they've done in franchise history in replacing star players who have been hurt or, continuing to play through, when you have star players who aren't playing up to their potential due to injury, like Ronnie Stanley, at left tackle. It's just something that's been interesting to me. It's like, the past 2 seasons, we've really killed ourselves with the injuries that we've had. And we've suffered so many injuries this season, and we've been dominant. And I don't think that local media is giving the Ravens enough credit for it. And it's something that's been pretty interesting in my opinion.
I mean, it's definitely been a lot better than last 2 years. I mean, obviously, I think having a healthy quarterback is the biggest thing. Especially long term. I mean, we found out 2021. We could win some games with Snoop. Even in 2022, I guess there's some games in there. It's like, okay, yeah, we could kind of hold the ship with it, but we had too many position groups in addition to the quarterback that were just so difficult to replace. And yeah, I mean, it's been a little better, certainly. Tackle, safety, corner, running back, tight end. I guess receiver is probably the only healthy group we have right now. Actually, that's not true. We have Duvernay's out. But anyway, yeah, point stands. I think it's a good point.
Yeah, and I mean, of course, if Lamar was, I don't even want to say it because of what's happened the previous 2 seasons, but you know what I mean. We know what I'm getting at there. So, of course, we got Lamar, and he's fixing a lot of things. But, I mean, I think you even got to look at 2021. You had major injuries. Running backs were hurt. We've got hurt running backs this year. You still had Mark Andrews back then. You had injuries in the secondary. We've had injuries in the secondary this year. And even though we were winning in 2021, you look at that team, and in my opinion, and I'm pretty sure the metrics back it up as well, this 2023 team, I think is in better shape and is a better unit than what you're patching together in 2021. So I mean, it's not a big deal, and obviously it doesn't really mean anything if the Ravens still make it to the playoffs and don't advance. I just think that's been a storyline that I feel like hasn't gotten as much attention as it really deserves, because it's kind of being covered up by the fact like, oh, well, Lamar is here. Lamar's covering up, any problems that we have, where actually, in 2021, we had Lamar there and he wasn't able to cover up everything. So,
yeah.
Do we want to talk about special teams or?
Yes. Tucker.
Yeah.
I mean, the wins. I mean, the wins that game were crazy.
They were.
Obviously, the Jags, McManus had 2 missed field goals.
Anyone get the Nuggets? I didn't get any Nuggets.
I got my -2 fantasy points from it.
But yeah, I mean, hey, a couple of weeks ago, I mean, I don't know how serious we were about it. Not saying Tucker was the greatest of all time. We were saying there may be cracks, but like, I think it's a good bounce back game for him, man. He just ended up making all of his kicks in the crazy wins, and I didn't think any of them were ever in doubt either. I think there was one situation where they could have decided to kick a long one, and they decided to get the delay of game penalty and back it up a little bit and then punt. Maybe that might have been a situation to have Tucker go for it a couple of years ago, but honestly, I think it was probably weather related primarily. I just think in those conditions, it really didn't make much sense. But otherwise, man, I mean, it's perfect. Like, I think it's a great bounce back game for him.
Yeah, tremendous. Definitely agree that the conditions weren't great. I don't think there's any ever a consideration he wasn't the greatest of all time. Just where's he at?
Nah, just
right now.
That's what I was. I mean, that's what I was saying. Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Yeah.
Well,
but,
I feel
he's
like
definitely
since that narrative's come out, we need to push back what we can. Well, at the same time, I think the discussion of the 55+ yard field goals is legitimate. Like you said, they didn't even attempt it this game. Who knows if he would have made it or not, but still,
Jordan Stout, phenomenal punting. He's really seemed to master the directional kicking. Confidently can get the ball right around the 10-yard line, which I think is huge. Don't have to be too greedy and dance with the devil around the 5. You get that at the 10, they have to go 90 yards. I think that's a great field position swing. So he's been really doing well with that. And I think, it's an underappreciated weapon. It really helps boost the defensive performance.
Definitely. Yeah. And I mean, he just looks so much more confident back there this year than last. I mean, there were certainly some games last year where, I don't want to say he cost us the game, but certainly, the field position battle could have been better, particularly in those games with Snoop. He also had some great games last year that gave us, hope that he could be a really solid contributor going forward. And this year he continues to make big punts. Those punts inside the 20 were really great. And I mean, we're talking about wins with field goals. You got to deal with that for punting as well. So excellent effort from Stout, who's had, a really good sophomore campaign this year.
Yeah, those were definitely helpful, particularly later in the game. Jamal Agnew, Jags punt and kick returner, super explosive guy. Had a couple rough, plays from him Coverage kind of broke down a little bit and just kind of had him get more yards than anticipated. And, I feel like those directional punts, Alec, right back to your point, like, it was great at the end of the game, just have him end up kicking it out of bounds, not even giving him an attempt to be able to return it. Because, I think that guy could have definitely opened the game up a little bit more if he had the right opportunity from us.
Want to wrap up with some MVPs?
Let's do it.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. I'll give mine to Isaiah Likely, both for that catch, the Lamar play that we talked about, but but also, man, I mean, leading receiver this game, continuing to play really well in Andrews' absence. I think he had the other play that I think I remember. He ended up, I don't know if he made that first down or ended up getting really close to it, but he had that one play where he kind of had his defender on his ankles, but then made a move to make another guy miss. I was like, wow, this crazy amount of athleticism to be able to do that. Continuing to play really well. So good job.
I'm going to give mine to Marlon Humphrey. Bounce back game after he struggled a bit against the Rams. We said in the recap with that, definitely never want to see that, but it was his first game coming back from injury, and it was in the rain. Let's be patient with him. One game certainly does not mean that he's fully back, but he made it life tough for Ridley, and he looked pretty good out there. So Marlon Humphrey gets mine.
I changed my mind at the last minute. I'm going to give it to Keenan Mitchell for his explosive plays and really leaving it all out on the field. And wish him a speedy recovery. And like you said, Peter, gosh, I really hope that speed comes back because it's special. It's one of those things that you see every once in a while in the league. Everyone's super athletes in this league, but every once in a while you see guys that's just a little bit different. And he definitely is one of those guys. And wish him the best. And I can't wait to discuss it later on. Be an off-season show for sure. But like, how the heck do we handle this running back situation? It just got even murkier going into the next season. No one is on contract except for Hill, and it's just everyone's going to be coming back from injury or whatever if they do want to keep some familiar names around. So I don't know. Who knows? Maybe Melvin Gordon has a renaissance.
Hey.
Oh, God.
But anyways, guys, we have a great episode coming up talking about the 49ers game. Everybody's going to be watching Christmas night. Beautiful thing. And make sure to check out that episode with Aaron. He's always a treat to talk to, full of interesting stats, etc. So check that out. And you can find us on Twitter at OneWinningPod, YouTube OneWinningPod, and email us onewinningpod@gmail.com if you want to say something a little longer. We appreciate everybody for listening. Go Ravens. See you later in the week.